It's my
Okay.
great pleasure to be joined once again by Christoph Müller. He is a fellow YouTuber speaking to what I think is doing one of the most important jobs, and that is trying to speak to a German language audience about what's going on in Ukraine and indeed I would say the evil intentions of Russia, and indeed their effectiveness at manipulating information. Christoph is formerly how would you describe an army bandsman or an army musician in Germany, and
Yeah,
now oh,
don't call it like that because if you say army music, then you have marching music in
okay,
your head.
okay.
But I was a member of the big band of the German Armed Forces, kind of airman of note of the Americans' former Glenn Miller Orchestra. So I'm a big band musician,
Well,
jazz
that's
musician.
fantastic. That period has got a lot of energy, hasn't it? That music is
That's true.
yeah, creates a very atmospheric kind of. It's what my grandmother would have been listening to when she was dancing through the Blitz. Actually, exactly that kind of music.
Good times.
Yeah. Well, not good times, but
I don't
the
know.
music helped people to survive.
I mean, good moments in bad times. I want to
Yes,
call
that's
it like
it.
that.
That's it. Exactly. No, I know what you meant. I was being a little facetious there. Um, we're going to talk about what I think is an extraordinary topic, and for some time on the channel, we've been talking about the escalation, as let's call it, Russia's intention to mount more and more provocations of NATO and NATO members. Not, in my view, to create a reaction from us, but actually to show that there is no reaction. That I think is the point, to show that our institutions are weak. Germany is this extraordinary kind of enigma here. It's to me at least, and I'd like you to explain a bit more. Slow to start, slow to support Ukraine in the beginning, and it had to be pushed and coerced and dragged, kicking and screaming in some ways. But once it got going, once it woke up, actually Germany is this I know enigma. Germany's doing an extraordinary amount for Ukraine. Rheinmetall is building factories and workshops and helping to keep Ukraine in the fight. So you have both extraordinary strength and extraordinary weakness that seems to come from the same place. How do you explain it?
That is a brilliant question. That's the key question. I think we have also a very split population. We have many people in Germany who are completely taken in by the Russian propaganda narratives and by a long tradition of being pro-Russian. I'm talking now of the East Germans. And on the other side, we have clear-sighted, as I can say, people who push forward. So there are different forces struggling against each other. This is going on. This is forced by Russia, of Russian propaganda narratives all the time, and intensified even in the last months, years, very much. And and we have also this tradition in Germany being completely pacifist and saying we have been the bad ones in the Second World War and we caused so much trouble over the world. So war is evil and get rid of all wars. And then those peace narratives like make love, not war, those hippie narratives, they are very strong in Germany still. And that's why we have so many different and the governments, of course, the administration of Olaf Scholz, those were exactly those people who have been in this 19 in the 68 peace movement. They were very strong. They exist. There exist images of Olaf Scholz when he was sitting there with long hair, curled hair. You cannot believe Olaf Scholz as a young guy sitting in front of the government of the German Democratic Republic, the GDR, the Soviet puppet state East Germany. And they were sitting there and negotiating seriously about something. So that explains why our German government under Olaf Scholz was so completely paralyzed, I guess, because he has this wrong peace narrative in his head.
He's not someone you can imagine being old, actually. I'm convinced he sort of popped out of the womb looking like a sort of middle-aged man, but that's another story there. Um, and we have these incursions. So, Germany has actually got a lot of targets for Russian sabotage. And we saw the attempt to, I think, assassinate
Yeah,
CEO of Rheinmetall, wasn't it?
mm,
Just
yeah.
2 years ago.
Armin Papberger.
Yeah, that's an extraordinary. Again, the reaction, the lack of reaction to that is extraordinary.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of targets, a lot of R&D, a lot of development, a lot of factories, a lot of things that are absolutely critical for European defense, cited in Germany, as well, of course, as the financial resources, which Germany has more of than any other country or many other regions of Europe combined. Although Poland is starting to move impressively into, it recently passed the $1 trillion economy threshold and is investing hugely in its military. So a new force is emerging, which is good, and it's good that there's a degree of collaboration going on there between Ukraine and Poland and Ukraine, Germany, and Germany and Poland. But we saw the drone incursions. And of course, NATO is slapping itself in the back, saying, well, we shot some down and we reacted really well and blah, blah, blah. Of course, as Ukrainians point out, that it is entirely not feasible to attack these drone flotillas with F-35s and F-16s and extremely expensive munitions that were used to shoot 4 out of the 19 drones out of the sky. There would have been many more, it turns out, except Ukraine managed to shoot quite a few of them down that were heading towards Poland. That's not really being pointed out by too many
Oh,
commentators.
right.
Let's transpose that, because I believe this is coming. Let's say that there were the same kind of incursion into German territory, which is further away, but actually logistically, most of the territory of Germany come well within the extended range of some of these drone types, especially if they strap on extra fuel tanks. What if you were to see 20 or 30 drones drop down over the territory of Germany, most likely sort of Western Germany? What would the reaction be? What would it do to the political environment, the sort of reaction or lack of it to that incursion, which I expect to happen sometime, maybe even this year?
I expect it too, and I think this is just the worst, the next escalation step, and I'm pretty sure that there will not be an adequate reaction. They will not be able to shoot them down, and they will try to wipe that away as everything, every attack. The the Germans are really, from my point of view, absolutely reluctant, reacting somehow aggressively against Russian, which is not aggressive, which is we have to defend ourselves, but we are so reluctant. We don't want to escalate, and this is so strong in our governments, so that I have really a pessimistic view on that. There will be no reaction.
And of course, no reaction invites more tests, more escalation, the next stage of
Yes, yes.
probing.
Бажаємо міцного здоров'я. Ми бійці батальйону безпілотних систем Black Raven 93-ї бригади Холодний Яр виконуємо бойове завдання на Константинівському напрямку в Донецькій області. Для їх успішного виконання наш підрозділ має потребу в пікапах для виїзду особового складу на позиції, евакуації, своєчасного підвозу боєприпасів, дронів та обладнання в район ведення бойових дій. Звертаємося до YouTube-спільноти Silicon Curtain та Джонатана особисто з проханням допомогти підтримати збір, а також до Car for Ukraine та Бандера-Мобіль з проханням допомогти з купівлею, підготовкою та доставкою авто на фронт. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Yeah.
And we have to consider what that might be, because it has been pointed out that Russia has not performed particularly well on the battlefield, that it most likely does not have the military capability to roll into Europe militarily in a classic sense. And that's what people focus on. They say, okay, because it cannot do that, then there is no danger. And I think that's to miss the danger from informational warfare, from the so-called coercive manipulation, active measures, sabotage, all these other stuff together, which actually constitute a more important part of the Russian offensive operations than the kinetic bit. That's the bit you do when all the rest has failed. But when it comes to the Baltics, they are quite small territories, and despite putting a huge amount of their resources into defense, it's possible to think of the Baltics as being vulnerable, possibly to some, lightning attack. If Russia was to steam through them in a couple of days, which is not entirely impossible, especially if it mass troops in the way that we saw in the recent Zapad 2025
Hmm.
military thing. What would do you think would be the reaction of not just Germany, but France, Britain, Nordics, etc., Poland? Would we immediately mount a kind of army to retake them, or would we immediately try to find ways to lower the intensity, the tone, to perhaps make some kind of consensus with the reality on the ground? What's your sense?
That is a strong one. Uh, you know, when you look at the Crimea scenario, there was from the Ukrainian side, they let it happen, and I'm afraid really that the Russians have good chances to come through with this. They could attack our military NATO territory without any real consequences. Um, I cannot believe that the Germans would start. We have a really big. We are building up a big brigade of in Lithuania. Until 2027, there should be 5,000 soldiers ready. Now, in the moment, it's still in the way to be constructed. But they cannot believe that they will ever be involved, and so we need. I'm not a prophet. I cannot say, but I say 70-30 that they will not react, and that the Russians will get what they want. And this is, I'm sorry to say that. What's what's your prophecy on that?
Yeah, I expect something along there. I mean, of course, we have the knowledge of, or the memory, some of us do, of the Falklands War, and I think two things stick in the mind there. One is the Thatcher government, to save money, withdrew the last British warship that was patrolling those waters, not really thinking of the strategic consequences. We showed weakness to an enemy that we knew had certain designs on that territory, because they made that explicit and clear. And then the almost, dare I say, inevitable reaction followed, which is they took that as a signal that we weren't willing to defend those territories and mounted an invasion. Then our reaction was extraordinary, despite the cost, despite the immense suffering that was going to be an inevitable part of that. We mounted a huge military effort, commandeered tons of civilian ships, and sent an armada out.
Yeah,
Even though theoretically, you've actually got two allies going to war against each other. We've got NATO, and there's an equivalent organization for the sort of South Atlantic Treaty as well, a sort of mirror, and Argentina was part of it. So theoretically, you've got two US allies going to war against each other. Very complicated situation. But the US claimed a sort of neutrality, but I think gave quite a bit of targeting data and support to the UK. And we had Argentina that actually used French missiles, which sunk a few British ships. So that's an extraordinary kind of sort of battle of countries that are, I would say, not dissimilar actually in some of their weaponry. I mean, it turned out that they didn't have necessarily the training or the organization or even the will, especially amongst conscripts, to defend those territories they're taken by force. So I think there's two things to note there. One is we should not ignore this idea of sending out signals of weakness. And I think that's unfortunately what Europe and even Britain to some extent and NATO are doing. We are congratulating ourselves on what we think is a robust response, but that response is universally recognized or taken in Moscow to be a sign of weakness, an invitation to the next escalation. So would we mount the hugely costly and at-scale operation that would be required and the extraordinary devastation that would be caused by retaking the Baltics? Now, imagine Russia took them very swiftly. You might not actually have that much damage to infrastructure and cities and so on. It might be pretty rapid. Would we potentially, incur the devastation of those territories by retaking them by force? There are so many tricky questions which require extraordinary leadership, which we haven't really seen on display in the last 4 years.
That is the point. Extraordinary leadership. You English had Churchill in the Second World War, who was also pushed back a long time, and then the real war had to happen, and then finally Churchill came up. And I'm afraid that we are facing also this scenario because nobody is able to take the right measures in the beginning of something like that, to step out a little fire before the whole forest is burning. So, but we have also, I don't want to be that pessimistic, we have also quite a bunch of very good politicians in Germany, but unfortunately they are not in power. Take, for example, Roderich Kiesewetter from the CDU. He is extremely clear-sighted and says that what has to be done. We have also Norbert Röttgen from the CDU. We had Michael Roth from the SPD, from Scholzen's party, who was completely clear-sighted and still is. But those people, they are pushed aside in the government circle. When you remember that Friedrich Merz, our chancellor, our last talk, Jonathan, was that you put very big hopes into Friedrich Merz, because his rhetoric was like that. He said,
his rhetoric is still strong, but the action does not follow.
That's the point. He is really strong in his rhetoric, but he became weaker before the elections, and that's why I voted for him. I told him, he said, I would deliver towers. And that's he said that very clearly, and now he broke his promise. And I recently, actually 3 days ago, I was making an interview with a CDU, with the candidate to become the mayor of our city of Bonn, and I asked him this question: why did Friedrich Merz promise that, and finally he didn't do that? And then this guy told me, it's politicians. Before you get elected, you must promise things, and then finally the reality comes back, and then you have to negotiate with your colleagues from the opposition, and then it's becoming very difficult. This is the biggest mistake, that the politicians, they are not acting as they say. So we have to get back on the track that truth is that the spoken word will become also lead into actions, and we are not good at that.
And it also seems that, and this is again talking about Europe and the UK here, it seems that in the post-war period, we've deferred our security to the US. And it seems there is still a considerable amount of hope that despite all the evidence to the contrary, and all of Trump's extraordinary weakness. I don't want to go too much into American politics, but from a European angle, it seems that we are still hoping that the US is there in a way that it used to be, that we can have this dependency on the US. And really, when push comes to shove, or if, let's say, there are drones over Berlin or Russian troops in the Baltics, that the US will come to our aid in the way that it would have done before. I feel that's delusional. What's your view?
They will definitely not come, and this is now this is more than ever clear. And I still can't understand because that nobody is taking measures, that we are as Europe on our own now, and that we need also Ukraine. This country, Ukraine, is proving since 3.5 years in the hot war that they are able to do the job NATO was once created for, to protect ourselves from Russia. They do the job, but we still treat them as if they are begging for our help. No, we are begging for their help. It's coming, and I think that we must really very quickly get rid of this delusion that America is coming to help us. And our, yeah, there's many people saying that. But the politicians in power, they don't. They still go and say, yeah, Donald Trump, we have to flatter him. We have to tell him that he's the nicest, the biggest, beautiful. He is a king. He is treated like a king when he's coming to Prince Charles. So
they know how
what is your,
to. Well, I think
what
this is the trick there. I mean, I couldn't have done what they do there, but I think the English talent is to flatter without demeaning themselves, which is quite an art form there, to make a host that actually, in reality, all of those people at those sessions there, all of them think he's ludicrous. All of them think he's toxic. Almost all of them probably think he's unpleasant and not clever. And they're able to flatter his ego without necessarily demeaning or destroying their own values. I mean, that's
I mean,
quite an art form of diplomacy.
it's a, it's
But
a,
it's
it's a,
unfortunate that we have to do that.
you're right. It's okay to flatter him and do this art form. And obviously, the NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte is also very good in this art. But I'm not sure if he would be able to also take the right measures to shoot back
Well,
if
this is the
Russian.
problem. This is the problem, I think, because all the people there in Britain also understand that Britain, as my recent interviewer pointed out, have more physical presence in Ukraine than any other country. Where we're making a substantial difference on the ground. We don't necessarily have the let's say the mechanical, technical, industrial might that Germany has managed to preserve in the military sector, but we have people with certain skills, putting
Mhm.
those skills to good use in a way that is fairly unique on the ground. So again, all these people understand that yes, you're flattering Trump, but you're not waiting for a miracle to happen.
Absolutely.
You're getting on and doing a job yourselves. You're just trying to stop him from doing the worst scenario. The worst scenario here is that he actually colludes with Putin and helps Russia more than he has done already.
Yes. Be happy if Trump will ever do something right. This might happen, but I don't think it will happen. But we have really to start our not only start to establish our own uh, defense organization and to be clear-sighted. Once again, our mindset and our heads is very disturbed and twisted, and especially we Germans are really completely twisted. Like we have so many influential agents here in Germany, which are becoming really political leaders. I mentioned already the interview with Luke Harding. Luke gave me really a new view on that. It is even a pro when you say, yeah, we have to make peace with Russia. We have to understand that the security interests of Russia, they are important, and the NATO has expanded. All those Russian lies, they are floating around in the heads of those people. Let me show this meme from which I today just got sent. This explains everything. So here on this meme, you can see Gerhard Schröder, very well-known ex-chancellor, big buddy of Putin, and the head of Nord Stream. And here is Oskar Lafontaine. He's the husband of Sarah Wagenknecht. Sarah Wagenknecht is the other pro-Russian party, came out of the left party. She is a Stalinist political figure. Here in front, you see Alice Weidel. She is the leader of the German AfD party, which is rising incredibly, this is awful. And it's written above here, German in fear. And here you see, first Russian drones have been sighted over Berlin. So, so this means they are all the time already there. And the big discussion is, shall we shoot them down, I say, or shall we let them just cruise around and do whatever they want to do? This is ridiculous. This is the
And this is
situation.
it. I mean, if there are physical drones in the sky, these people's reputations will not be damaged. It may actually give more power and authority to them, in fact, in the ensuing chaos. of a drone incursion.
Yeah. And that's why shoot them down as with real drones would be the right measure. Or if the MiG-31 fighter jets are cruising around for 12 minutes in Estonian airspace, shoot them down. There are some people who tell that. There are more people in Germany who would say, you're a warmonger if you do that. No, 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 we have to de-escalate. But what will be the solution of this? And that brings us again to the topic what you mentioned in the beginning. Russia is all the time provoking us. It's like I have an image of a little boy hitting all the time against the knee of a big man. We are strong, but we let this little boy all the time hitting our our knee. I don't know how to say in English, and without reaction. If I would, if a little boy would treat me like this, I would take him and his sleeve and say, "If you do this once again,
It's like the ones in the in the cinema or something, kicking on the back of your seat.
Yes,
do
yes.
I sit and watch the whole film and pretend it's not happening, or a chair in a car or something? No, you turn around and
exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to react, and I wonder how long the Russians will be allowed to do this without any consequences. But I'm afraid that our whole democratic system is going to crumble. We are the European Union, including some other democracies on the other side of the globe. We are the last democracies which are left. They are trying to destroy us.
Yes, they are. That's
shall we allow it to happen? That
exactly. First, destroy our institutions, those things that give us strength and cohesion. NATO and the EU, I mean, they are definitely one of their targets is to destroy the EU.
Absolutely.
It's my belief that they helped to lean into Brexit because peeling Britain away from the European community was one of the first acts of significantly weakening it and weakening us at the same time. And it's part of a long-term strategy once people are divided, they're much more easy to control and defeat if required. But we call this episode Drones Over Berlin, and I don't think it'll be long before we see the next provocation. Certainly, they've been happening on a regular basis every 1 to 2 weeks. We've seen a new, completely unexpected provocation from Russia. Unfortunately, if you're paying attention, they're not as unexpected as they would appear to be. And I think the next threat would be to European airspace. Buzzing airports with drones, shutting down flights. It will cost hundreds of millions of euros, and it will cause political disunity. And again, will we react? Will we not? That's something Russia will be testing.
When you're saying that, I wonder, have you heard the news about today's events in Berlin?
No, what's happened? What's happened? I haven't seen the news at all.
No, because this morning I heard on the radio that the Berlin airport has closed down, not completely closed down, but a lot of flights have been canceled because there was a hacker attack on some company.
I did know that. Yeah, that broke yesterday, didn't it? Where I was actually flying back from Europe and worried about the disruption, myself. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes, but this, and then the second half of this news speech was they cannot say where it came from. Nobody knows. This is always how they treat things here in Germany.
Except we know exactly where this has come from.
Yes, but we always say we don't know. And then they always also quote the Russians. They say they denied for the MiG incursion into the airspace over Estonia, flying around and so on. Russians denied. Yeah. Well, why is this news important that Russians deny? I don't know. I think it's not even worth mentioning it.
No. When they go out of their way to deny something, that's usually confirmation of their exact guilt. But that context is never provided in the news.
Absolutely. So we have to change our wording also in the in the newsrooms. What do you think about that, Jonathan?
Well, we do. We know, and this has been the problem for the last 4 years. We don't highlight the pattern, which is Russia is engaged in a war against the Western powers. It is not a traditional war, therefore we're able to put labels on it and ignore it. We call it cyber, we call it hybrid, we call it grey zone, we call it all sorts of things which fragment it in our minds into
Mhm.
sort of these siloed different approaches, which
Mhm.
we can kind of ignore and dismiss. That's
Mhm.
not how it's seen as part of the Russian military doctrine. These are all parts of the same strategic aim, which is to weaken and ultimately divide, control, and destroy your enemy. Without reporting that context, without reporting the narrative that we are engaged in a multifaceted, very direct confrontation with Russia, then we will continue to normalize and play these things down. We'll continue to lose. We are losing the information war. Let's make that absolutely clear.
Yeah. And another thing, I let me show you another graph, which is we recently had last week we had elections in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is the county in Germany where I live in, the county with the biggest population, 3.5 million people are living here, and the election results were those here, and here you can see the AfD, the blue one, is the strongest, has the strongest rise in all the other ones, the established ones. The CDU is the blue one, which is a strong. On the left, you can see the actual results. On the right, you can see the changes in the compared to 2020. And here you can see the CDU won the election with 33%, SPD 20%, Greens lost a big chunk, and the AfD is stronger than the green ones, which is also the first time since they exist. The
Terrifying, but they're explicitly a
terrifying,
pro-Russian party and very.
absolute. And the other one, the purple one, this is the Wagenknecht party, Sarah Wagenknecht, pro-Russian. And here you can see on the right the changes, the gains and the losses compared to 2020. And here you can see all the established democratic parties, the CDU, the SPD, and the green ones, and the FDP, they all lost. And those pro-Russian parties, they gained. AfD tripled their results compared to the last time. And the Wagenknecht party also gained. How can this be possible? I wonder all the time in Germany. This is really crazy and has to do with the information. The people who go to the elections, they elect for those parties who they think they are the best and they can change things, or those were
Yeah.
also protest voters. They say all those other democratic parties, they made all the time any bad things and scrap and didn't perform well. And so now this time we have to show them, to punish them, and then they chop away their own the democracy. And so we have to attack on to re-attack on the information war space. This is exactly what we are doing here, Jonathan. And I have to try to make more in Germany, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's a good place to wrap up and remind people of the extraordinary work that you're doing and why it's so important. Germany is one of the central pillars of European democracy, and what one hoped would be a productive and affluent democratic future, which is coming under attack. So I think what you're doing is critical. And it is the battle. It's the central battlefield for
What,
hearts and minds in Europe, as
and
you've pointed out.
what
And I
you
strongly encourage people to follow your work and links in the description, of course, of the video.
this would be really, really great that I could also reach more. But I think you are doing such a great job, and I try to bring also more German viewers on your channel, Jonathan. Silicon Bytes, Silicon Curtain, and Silicon Wafers, which is new now, and
That's it.
extraordinary. Thank you so much, Jonathan,
Thank
for
you.
having me here.
Thank you. And thank you for your friendship and your support. And as I say to people, do please follow these materials because we need to understand how Russian information warfare is playing out in Central Europe. For today, though, thank you. And that is it.
That is it. Thanks a lot.